Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Killer Author Club, your favorite haunt for all things murder, mystery, and mayhem. Tonight, the one and only Clémence Michallon is risking fictional life and limb to answer all of our burning questions about our last resort. So grab your list of questions, your poison of choice, a cocktail or mocktail, and get ready to kill the lights.
Welcome to the Killer Author Club. 3 best-selling authors talking about killing, of the fictional kind, with the best thriller and suspense authors in the business. Killer conversations, killer cocktails, and killer guests, with your hosts, Kimberly Bell, Heather Gutenkopf, and Kara Ruda. This is the Killer Author Club.
Hi again.
This is so cool. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the intro.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm Killer Kara Ruda.
I'm Killer Clémence.
And I'm Killer Kimberly Bell. Killer Heather Gutenkopf couldn't be here tonight, but she is here with us in spirit, and she'll be back with us next time.
And before we dive into our last resort, a couple quick PSAs. If you love tonight's show and want more, check out the Killer Postmortem, our podcast exclusive after show where every guest confesses something deadly. Tonight's show will be available for download on your favorite app starting this Friday. Links are at killerauthorclub.com. And while you're there, make sure to sign up for our newsletter. We promise we won't spam you, and it's actually fun and very informative. Okay. And without further ado, our author tonight is the author of The Quiet Tenant, a USA Today and international bestseller and nominee for the Hammett Prize. She's also a freelance journalist whose work has appeared in the New York Times Book Review, Time Magazine, The Independent, and many more. Clémence was born and raised near Paris, has lived in New York since 2014, and became a U.S. citizen in 2022. Our last resort is her second thriller. Congrats, Clémence, and welcome to the Killer Author Club.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me in the club.
Oh, yeah, we're very excited to have you here. Well, while we got you, could you give us a quick elevator pitch about our last resort?
Yes, of course. So Our Last Resort is my second thriller. It tells the story of Frida and Gabriel, who are 2 people who travel to this gorgeous resort in the desert in Utah to try to mend their sibling relationship because they've been apart for a few years. Everything is going well, not perfectly well, but well enough, until a few days into their stay, a female guest turns up dead at the hotel, evidently murdered. The murder investigation is quickly going to focus on Gabriel because it's not the first time a woman has died in his orbit. This is going to force Frida and Gabriel to confront some pretty dark truths and secrets from their past, which they were hoping never to revisit. Their past is complicated because Frida and Gabriel grew up in a cult in upstate New York. So the novel is told in dual timelines. One is the contemporary timeline, which focuses on the murder investigation at the hotel and its consequences on our 2 sibling characters. The other timeline spans years and covers their childhood in the cult and its fallout. And it was very interesting for me to write, and I hope people enjoy meeting Gabriel and Frida and their many secrets.
Well, we did, for sure. And I know that there's people in here who have read it and are also very excited to ask you some questions. But first, Kimberly, what are we drinking?
Right. So Killer Clémence has chosen a dry martini as her special drink. Killer Clémence, why did you choose the dry martini?
So I chose the dry martini because it is, in my opinion, a perfect drink. I started drinking vodka martinis from the inspiration of my mother-in-law. I had never had one before, but I do like vodka, so I was curious to try it. And she introduced me to possibly now my favorite drink. It's also the only cocktail I know how to make because it's very simple to make a dry vodka martini. So the way I was taught to do it is to really chill the glasses and the shaker in the freezer beforehand. And then you take your vodka, Grey Goose, of course, and you add that with some ice to your shaker. Before you do that, you do the dry vermouth in the martini glass. This is how I like it. You swirl a little bit of dry vermouth, literally drops, and then you dump it. Whatever coating remains in the glass is all you need. You shake your vodka with the ice in the shaker, and then you pour that into your martini glass. And I like to garnish it with olives, preferably at least 3, and they should be like plump. Ideally, you're left with what my husband calls a large glass of vodka. And that is exactly what this is.
I mean, it sounds delicious.
But you know,
It's barely a mixed drink.
Yeah.
I don't have it that often because I inevitably have a headache the next day, no matter how much water I drink or food I eat. So I usually just have it like after I run a marathon or something. It's my reward.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. All right, you guys, we created the Killer Author Club so readers could get up close and personal with their favorite thriller writers. This season's lineup is stacked with killers: Peter Swanson, Anthony Horowitz, Chevy Stevens, and our very own killer Heather, plus so many more. For dates, times, and past episodes, surf to killerauthorclub.com. But tonight, it's all about Our Last Resort, a most anticipated book of the summer by the New York Times, USA Today, Oprah Daily, Boston Globe, Marie Claire, Crimereads, Apple Books, Goodreads, Brit and Company, and She Reads, among, I'm sure, many more. Clémence Michallon is one of the most daring, exciting new voices in psychological suspense. She writes page-turners with stunning and surprising depth. That is from New York Times bestselling author Lisa Jewell. Mary Kubica said, thought-provoking and shocking, a perfect summer story. Clémence, you're clearly a very skilled and shocking killer. So now we need to know your answer to the killer question: why do you kill?
This is such an interesting question. I've been trying to think about it. Knowing me, I either kill because someone interrupted me while I was trying to write, or because someone in front of me was rude or demeaning to someone that they have like a little bit of agency or power over. That is something that could potentially lead me to murder, I think, in terms of triggers. So the first one is I sort of famously hate, who likes being interrupted when they're trying to write, but it's just so hard to focus, and being interrupted just really makes me angry. I've had this project to frame that scene from The Shining where he goes, when you hear this, like, it means I'm writing, don't come in, blah, blah. I've had this idea of printing that, like a good quality, series of screenshots of this and putting it outside the office door. And I just moved. And so now it's part of the projects. And yes, other than that, people being sort of making bad use of their power, using it to belittle other people.
Yeah, I agree. That's murder worthy too. You're right.
I agree. Yes. Yeah. No jury would convict you.
No jury would convict. Exactly.
Right. He had it coming to him. There you go. Okay, so I love the setting of the book, mostly because I've also been to the Armageddon before too, so I could picture.
You have? Yeah. You're the first person I've spoken to in the context of this book who has been there.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's so, I mean, it really is otherworldly. We had done, actually, my book that I'm on tour with right now is set in the Utah national parks, like Bryce Canyon and all that stuff. So we went to all of those places, then we ended up at Armageddon. Like, wow, it was crazy. So
when was it? When did you go?
During the pandemic, actually, like right
towards
the end of the pandemic, because we could drive there from here. And so, yeah, we did this kind of whole tour of it. And it was such an interesting place to end up because we'd been staying in the National Lodges, which is a completely different and also experience, but ending up there and the way you describe it in the book, driving, and it's very hard to find. It's like an oasis. It really is. So I read that you were there when you were 18, I think. And so can you tell us like why that setting like stuck with you and why it was perfect for this story?
Yeah, so I went there 15 years ago when I was 18 years old. And I went there with my parents, and it was just like the most mesmerizing place I had ever seen. But it was also fairly isolated. And there was something about the contrast between this absolutely gorgeous, luxurious hotel and the absolutely inhospitable climate of the surroundings that just really struck me. The Amangiri, which the hotel in my book is inspired by, it's not like the same hotel. I changed some stuff, and and I also was not able to go back for research, unfortunately, because it is so expensive that it just simply was not reasonable to consider doing that. But it was just an incredible place. And I remember being struck by the fact that, I don't know if it's still like this, but when you are there, even though you are spending a ton of money to be there, you are never taking out a credit card or cash. Like you never actually take out money because it's all prepaid and it's all inclusive because you're in a desert. And so I was like, that's interesting. It's almost like a little trick the hotel is playing on us. Like it makes you forget what it took to get here.
Right.
And you're like in this luxury resort where there's not much to do aside from just like chilling, enjoying your beautiful surroundings, going to the pool, going on a hike, maybe. But you're surrounded by this climate that would kill you if you were left in it without any shelter for a couple hours, like a few hours. And so when I finished writing The Quiet Tenant, I thought, well, I just wrote this book set in upstate New York, and it's the winter and it's the fall, and all the settings in The Quiet Tenant are very simple and bare. And I thought, let's do something different. I want to travel somewhere beautiful. I want to travel somewhere hot. And I want to travel somewhere that you can't escape from very easily. Because that's the thing. It's hard to find this hotel. There's one access road. We missed it 15 times. We almost never went. But also, once you're there, you can't leave. Say, if you get into an argument with the people in your party, you're stuck with them. Like you're going to have to just awkwardly stare at one another for a couple of hours because there's nowhere to go. So I thought, well, that's amazing. That's a great setting for a crime novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
it made me want to go.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, I really want to come back. Sorry, my husband is trying to assist me in the background because my ring light died.
Oh no.
So
thank you, husband.
As long as you know who it is back there, you're all good.
And I texted him and I was like, help me. But no, it's still dead. But now I have my phone flashlight trying to have some backup. We're live, everybody.
The things we do for Killer Author Club, right?
Right.
Okay, so I feel like, and you mentioned it a little bit in your kind of back cover blurb about the book, but can you talk about the cult without any spoilers, the cult and its leader, and why you decided to create that backstory for your characters? Because it was fascinating.
Yeah. So when I started coming up with the premise of the book, I thought, okay, so I'm going to take this beautiful hotel, and obviously there's going to be a murder there because what else is going to happen? And I thought, I really am fascinated by the question of, how well do you ever know the people you love? So I thought, okay, this murder is going to have to lead one character to question whether someone they love is capable of murder. But then I thought, well, okay, if someone you love was suspected of murder, obviously your first reaction would be, no way. But then confronted with some evidence, if you're a rational person and you have watched any documentary, you know that it's possible, And so I thought there has to be something more between these two that would really reinforce that reluctance to believe that the other person could be capable of murder. It has to mean the end of the world. There has to be a bond between these two characters that was vital and essential. And I thought, well, if you grew up in a cult together and you go through that hell together, that would create a pretty intense bond, I think. And so then there was this idea of, oh, wow, if I have to suddenly reconsider everything I thought I knew about this person who has been a part of my world for so many years and with whom I do not know how to exist, then the stakes are immediately higher. So that's why I made it that they had grown up in a cult. And it was in terms of research, it was a very captivating endeavor to take on because much like when I wrote The Quiet Tenant, I didn't want the serial killer in the book to be the fictional avatar of a specific serial killer. Similarly, I didn't want the people to read Our Last Resort and to think, oh, the cult is obviously meant to be da da da. So there's some David Koresh, there's some Jonestown, there's some Nxivm. We can talk more about Nxivm if we want. And it all kind of percolated into the cult that is in the book.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
It's really
And you must have done a lot of research into like how people leave cults because they escaped, right? That's not a spoiler, I don't think.
No, it's not. I think we can safely assume that they're at a hotel.
Yeah, right.
Yes, I think yes.
So they escaped, but I mean that is a huge like moment for people to leave a cult, right? So how did you do your research into that? Did you talk to people who had left cults? And
yeah, I mean, I read some books, listened to some podcasts, watched some shows. In my work as a journalist, I have been in touch with people who maybe have loved ones who are in high control groups. Although I never crib directly from my work as a journalist because it would not feel right. But, it's a good way to have that information, to encounter it in real life. It enables me to kind of write about it responsibly then in my fiction because it feels like the stakes are high for me. In terms of leaving cults, if you watch cult documentaries, especially if you watch both seasons of The Vow, which is the Nxivm documentary, season 2 takes you through the journey of some of the women who were not ready to confront the truth about the cult in season 1. And you can see how painful it is because you have to admit that you just devoted years of your life to something that was just smoke and mirrors. And I have so much sadness and compassion and empathy in my heart for people who become victimized by cults. Cults are incredibly predatory organizations. And I think they weaponize what would otherwise be good qualities in people, right? Like existentialism, the need to believe in something. Usually there are people who ask themselves a lot of questions about the world and about their role in it. And they want to figure out a good way to exist. And then cults take those better instincts and turn it into something completely toxic. But then there was also the logistics of figuring out the journey of these characters after they leave the cult. We learn, for example, that they don't have birth certificates because the cult they grew up in is a commune. And so they were raised off the grid completely. For the government, they don't exist. And that was a logistical question that as an author, I was not prepared to solve, like
how does that even work?
What you're supposed to do. And so I ended up on websites that are made by organizations that help people leave cults, basically, and sort of reintegrate society. And it turns out that what you do if you don't have a birth certificate, I think one of the things you can do is find someone who was present at your birth and ask them to write an affidavit. And so it was a lot of piecing it together that way.
Interesting. Yeah. Fascinating. And I want to do a little plug for The Vow because Sarah Edmondson, who is one of the people who escaped Nxivm cult, is a friend of mine. She lives in Atlanta and was on The Vow. You see her a lot. And she also does a podcast called A Little Bit Culty, which is fabulous. So everybody go check those two things out.
Wow. All right. It's a lot of cult knowledge going on here.
I know. I learned it all from Sarah.
Well, and so as long as we're talking about Nxivm and like personal connections to the case, so the reason it loomed so large for me was my husband. This is not going where you think it's going. My husband was a public information officer for the office of the prosecutor that did the federal prosecution of Keith Raniere, who was the leader of Nxivm.
Oh.
And so this was pre-pandemic. And so it was in person. So for hours on end, my husband would sit in the courtroom where this trial was taking place. And it struck me that because this was all in person and I was at work during the day, we would reconvene at night. But if you took out the hours we spent sleeping during the week time, Keith Raniere had more FaceTime with my husband than I did, you know.
Wow.
And I took that very personally. So
Yeah.
that was fair.
And that's
And
also
that
if you're
part of
traveling.
it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was a
That was
huge trial.
Yeah, it was a big trial.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. And I kind of pulled this from your social media, but you wrote, there's actually a line in Our Last Resort in which the narrator says, everything I know about the world I learned on TV, which you said related to the way that you learned about the US when you were a kid before moving here as an adult. And I thought that was really charming and that you worked that in there too. So, in learning about the US, now you have like all this Hollywood hustle going on. So, can you tell us about Our Last Resort is already optioned, and your first novel, The Quiet Tenant, is already in progress. Can you tell us anything new about both of those?
Yeah, I mean, I am like super lucky because Blumhouse optioned The Quiet Tenant, and they have now optioned Our Last Resort. So I'm just thrilled. It's Blumhouse TV in both cases. And yeah, both are in development. With The Quiet Tenant, we have announced that we have Anthony Zeiper, who is the creator of CSI, who is our showrunner.
Wow.
And we also have Secret Menu, which is a production company co-founded by Charlize Theron, and they're co-producers. And so that's for The Quiet Tenant adaptation. And everyone has been so amazing to work with. And you know, all that you never know if something is going to get optioned. Like, it just seems like such a long shot, and I cannot believe that I've been this lucky so far. But also, I'm so glad that you singled out this sentence about everything I learned about the world I learned on TV, or most of what I learned about the world I learned on TV. I know I edited that sentence and I can't remember where I landed. But that was really like, when I wrote Gabriel and Frida after they leave the cult, a lot of it, I had to be like, well, what would someone who has been raised outside of society think when arriving in the US? And like, I'd been to the US as a tourist, but it's a little different to come here as an immigrant. And there was so much to learn. And I remember I was able to kind of mine that experience, even though I had more knowledge of the world than they did. But there's still like so much. There's so many hoops. And it is like a lot, like, you know, thinking, what did I see on TV? You know, like the first time I went to the doctors in America and I was handed the medication in the orange bottles, like that, I felt like I was on a TV show, because that's not how they are in France.
Right.
Or like when people were wearing scrubs, I felt like I was on ER, because that's where I see scrubs, you know. So little things like that.
I love it. Well, we could talk to you all night, but we have to get to our next segment, which is
That is right. Clémence is giving away 5 copies of The Last Resort to lucky US viewers. It doesn't matter where you're watching. We scour the comments everywhere we stream, but please make sure to shout out where you are from when you answer this question. It's a tough one tonight, but I know you can figure it out. What is the connection between Clémence and my last year's release, The Paris Widow? What could it be? Right, drop your answers in the comments.
Good luck, everyone. Don't copy. Okay. The Killers are big fans of independent booksellers and want to support the ones our killer authors love. Clémence has chosen Oblong Books in Rhinebeck, New York, as her special store tonight. Clémence, why do you like this bookstore so much?
I love this bookstore. It's my independent bookstore in the Hudson Valley, Oblong Books in Rhinebeck, but they also have a location in Millerton, which is great too. And well, there you go, Millerton and Rhinebeck. See, I did it
took me a minute to find it.
It's true. And it's like, I know things, and then when I have to state them in public, I second guess myself completely. I was like, is it really Millerton? Yes, it is. And so it's my local indie in the Hudson Valley, and they are amazing. The staff picks are always really great, and I'm not just saying that because The Quiet Tenant was one. But just amazing selection, really great community. They do wonderful events. I'm actually going to do an event there as part of the tour for Our Last Resort. It's always a pleasure to stop by. It's one of those stores that just has like a lot of soul. And I have spent hours browsing. And, it's not always a given when you are in a small town that you're going to have an amazing independent bookstore. And we are so spoiled with Oblong Books in Rhinebeck, and everyone loves them for a reason. They are amazing.
That's awesome.
Love
Okay,
it.
and I think we're dropping the link in the comments so you can order Our Last Resort along with any others you'd like on your wish list.
Love it. All right. So obviously the killers love to read, and we love it when you share what you're reading in our Facebook group. Post pictures, write reviews, ask for recommendations, and give yours. Tonight, though, we want to know, Clémence, what are you currently reading?
I just started reading a book that had been on my e-reader for quite some time, and I finally decided now was the time to dig in. It is called Just a Boy. It is crime fiction that is translated from the Italian. The author is called Elena Varvello. Elena is E-L-E-N-A. Varvello is V-A-R-V-E-L-L-O. And a few years ago, she wrote a book called Can You Hear Me?, which was, I think it was quite a success in the UK, notably, but I think she is criminally underrated in the US. So she writes these like domestic noir, super dark novels that are more about like normal people trying to live either in the aftermath of crime or in the midst of terrible crimes. And so Just a Boy, I actually pulled up the description before this because I tried to be a little bit prepared. And so here it is. The boy is almost 18 and has a loving family. He's polite and well-educated, quiet but always smiling. When word spreads that he has broken into and stolen from a neighbor's house, his parents and sisters can't believe it. Then the unthinkable happens, an attack that will rip through the town and his family for years to come. Just a Boy is a gripping, incisive novel about secrets, adolescence, and how we can love someone, a child, a partner, without ever knowing their mind. And this is so up my alley. It is so good. Her writing is so beautiful. I just love it.
Well, everybody check that out. I wrote it down. Just a Boy. And speaking of fantastic books, tonight we're excited to have a killer alumni to celebrate. Let me see if I can find it.
There we
go. Christina Dodd has a new book out in the world, Thus With a Kiss I Die, the second book in the Daughter of Montague series. This delightfully irreverent eldest daughter of the not so ill-fated Romeo and Juliet returns to sleuth another day in fair Verona in a hugely entertaining historical mystery series with a refreshingly bold premise. Christina is giving away 5 copies and some stickers to lucky US viewers. So let us know in the comments if you want one of those winners to be you.
And wait, there's more. Okay, we have 2 more fabulous new releases we want to celebrate tonight. First up, Bitter Frost by Brian Bruley. 13 years ago, former ice hockey star Jimmy Baker quit the game after almost killing an opponent. Oops. Now, as the Zamboni driver for the amateur team in his hometown of Bitter Frost, Michigan, he's living his penance until the morning he awakens to the smell of blood. Yikes. Okay, we also have Bright Little Girls by Lorna Hollifield. Bright Little Girls is a haunting exploration of friendship, obsession, and the price of artistic ambition, a psychological thriller that asks whether we can ever truly escape the consequences of our cruelest moments, especially while everyone is always watching. So you guys, we have 1 copy of Bitter Frost and 5 copies of Bright Little Girls to give away to US viewers. Leave a comment if you're interested and if you would like to win, and don't forget to tell us where you're from. Also, don't forget to check out the Killer's latest books.
That's right. Jill is not happy, but Killer Kara is, because her book is out in the world and a USA Today bestseller, a thriller about an ill-fated road trip that resurrects a married couple's darkest secrets.
And you know who else isn't happy? The main characters in Heather's upcoming thriller, The Perfect Host, when their over-the-top gender reveal party goes off the rails. Pre-order this one out in November. And Killer Kimberly also has a new book out, The Expat Affair, about 2 American expats in the deadly world of Amsterdam's diamond industry. Links for all of these are coming up in the comments.
That's right. I just put them in. Oh, no, I put the others in. They're coming up. But first, I have to tell you about our giveaway. Membership has its privileges, you guys. So if you're on Facebook, check out our oh, sorry. I'm trying to do too many things at once. I don't know how Heather does this.
It's like, to give you a minute to stall, there are two things I need to say. Someone asked, Renee asked in the chat, because I'm like catching up on the comments, green or black olives for the martini? Green. This is important.
Do people put black olives in martinis?
I've never tried it, but
maybe
I'm missing out.
Yeah, green and stuffed blue cheese.
Super plump and salty. I agree with that.
So my mother-in-law, she likes the blue cheese stuffed olives. I'm not a huge blue cheese fan personally, which is surprising for a French person. But
yeah, that is surprising.
I don't know. But they are nice. They do make sense. And then I should also have mentioned, if I had remembered to bring my brain tonight, that Oblong Books is the place if you want to pre-order a personalized signed copy of Our Last Resort.
Nice. Yeah. And I dropped that in the comments as well.
Yeah,
so it's already in there.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
All right. So I found what I'm looking for. Membership has its privileges, you guys. So if you're on Facebook, check out our private members only group called the Killer Author Club, where every episode the killers choose the name from the hat to win a piece of swag, t-shirts, mugs, candles, totes, hats. We got it all. All of them can be found at killerauthorclub.com. But tonight's winner is Gina Massey. I hope I said that correctly. Gina, congrats, and please send one of the killers your address so we can send some swag your way. If you want to be the next winner, become a member of the Facebook group and you're automatically entered. The link for that is coming up in the comments. Also, a big killer thanks to bookreporter.com for sharing the murdery love. Stay up to date on bookish news and events at bookreporter.com.
There you go. And Clémence, we have great news for you tonight. You have officially survived the Killer Author Club.
Woo. Yes. Yes.
It was close, like with the light going out and everything. That could have been a problem, but you're back.
Goodness.
5.
Light.
Yeah, funny. Yes, and your husband like creeping around behind. That was awesome.
I hope you're still able to like see me. I'm so disappointed. I set up this light just before, like for the first time. I can't believe it's already dead.
No, that's so weird. Well, it just added extra intrigue to the show, so we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Very on brand.
Yes, very.
I know. I have like my little like seance lighting now. Like,
it's perfect. Okay. And I think that does it for tonight's episode.
That does it for tonight's episode. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, and join us back here in 2 weeks on July 15th. When the one and only Peter Swanson will be in the hot seat answering all our burning questions about his latest Kill Your Darlings. In the meantime,
I just read that. Sorry, I interrupted you. I just read Kill Your Darlings. Actually, I almost brought it up when you asked me what I was reading. Sorry. I love Kill Your Darlings. This is going to be a great episode. So
I can't wait to talk to him about it because it goes backwards in time. So we're going to have lots of questions. Specifically how in the world you write a story backwards. But in the meantime, before now and then, please find us wasting entirely too much time on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, occasionally, probably too often for me. For time's upcoming schedule, past episode recipes, and merch, surf to killerauthorclub.com. Thanks for being part of the club.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That does it for tonight's show. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to catch our next show live, we're every other Tuesday night on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For times, upcoming schedule, and to catch up on past episodes, visit us at killerauthorclub.com. Happy reading. Now get on out there and kill that TBR.